I want to talk about economics. Firstly, let me thank Sharq Forum and Dr. Naim Gina for the possibility to be here today. And I'm sorry if my intervention will be a little bit depressive and pessimistic. Firstly, I think that while talking about new regional security system, we should take into consideration that we're talking about a first regional security system, because everything what existed here earlier was based on non-regional players, non-regional pillars, like Soviet Union, United States, colonial powers, and so on. But there is, while I was writing this text, I noticed there is one very interesting thing. When regional actors try to create something, to create some regional system, their own, it always was made by negative way. It always was an exclusive system. It always was a way of to support friendship against somebody, against Iran, against Israel, against somebody else. Why? Is it a result only of external intervention, external involvement in the region, or there is some specificity in political culture of Mena region? I don't know, really, but I think that it is a very important question, and we should think about it. Even today, while we talk about new regional security system, we began our talks about, usually, from the war against terrorism or war against ISIL, Daesh. It's an ideal enemy for everybody. Terrorism is better than Daesh because terrorism is absolutely abstraction. So to struggle against abstraction is good. But objectively, today the external involvement in the region is much less than it ever was. Now it is strange that it is Russian who tell it, but nevertheless. And today the regional players are learning to manage the region. They are in trying to understand the limits of their powers, the limits of their foreign ambitions. And I think that in these circumstances there are 4 clusters of the more important problems which make a situation very fragile. The first is the lack of experience, of course, and nobody knows how much time they need, regional actors needs to take this experience. The second is the weakness of every regional actors. We have so many candidates for regional leadership because of the weakness of everybody. Every state of the region can pretend to be a leader. And by the same reason, all of them, or most of them, always looks for some external support. No regional support, I want to say. The third problem is internal fragility of every country. Political, economical, social, identical, and so on. Maybe sometimes it is not a real fragility, objective fragility, but it is a sense, a feeling of fragility. And one of the consequences of this fragility is a very specific role of religious identities in the region. Confessional activism of Shia groups, of Salafist groups, is perceived by the governments in several countries as a domestic threat. But in the same time, it is a form to express protest of the population against injustice, against bad governance, and so on. And it always was. If we look at the history of the region, Islamic history of the region, always the protest popular movements were Shia or Salafist. So it doesn't deny the fact that some powers try to instrumentalize this confessional activism, but you can't instrumentalize something what doesn't exist. So it is a problem of the governments. It is a problem of the good governance. And the fourth problem is the cluster, is the total mistrust. It is mistrust not only in intergovernmental relations, but in social relations too, in relations between the government and society. And this mistrust is the start point for polarization, for fragmentation, for marginalization, for exclusivism, and so on. And of course, we can't do something, you can't do something with all these structural problems today. They need time. But from the other side, something must be done. I think about following. Firstly, I think that on the basic level, there is need in some multilateral dialogue on three subjects. And this dialogue can become a bridge to trustness. The first subject is a common values, common vision of the future, politically common strategy, common narrative. Without it, what kind of the Middle East do they want? How it look like? It's a liberal, or it is something else? And what do you mean by liberal and democracy? I have heard today and yesterday a lot of times they talk about democracy, but what do you mean by democracy in Yemen, for example, or in Iraq? Without, maybe you mean something, or maybe it is only a word. The second subject is the common threats. Water problem, food problem, demographic problem, and so on. In the situation of overpopulation of the region and lack of resources, conflictual potential of the region will increase. And we should accept this fact. And we should work with the exception of this fact. And the third, and I think it is much better enemy than terrorism. And the third subject is economic cooperation, social-economic interaction, development of regional economic institutions, and so on, restoration of destroyed regions. But up to this level, very theoretical maybe level, I think that there is a need in some inclusive regional agreement, political agreement, about basic principles of coexistence. There are some principles. Revision of borders is unacceptable. I think that every country of the region can be, state of the region can be agree with it. Sovereign nation states are the only legitimate actors in the security system. Yeah, there is Hamas, there is Hezbollah, but they are part of states, governments. Interferences in domestic affairs is unacceptable. The governments must be responsible for equality of all the segments of the population, and we can discuss some other principles. These principles will create some framework for common political work. But at the same time, in parallel with all this, there is a building of a new security system ad hoc now. And it is on the basis of conflict resolution. We can see Syria, Yemen, Libya. There are not very much very good results, but there is a process. And in this process, regional track is the most important. And we can see it in Syria. But we can see also that regional track can be effective and can work only with non-regional mediation and facilitation. And Russia, Piper Tiger, said today, try to play this role of facilitator, of mediator. It will try. and using diplomatic, political, and military tools too, of course. And the last point, I think that all these things can be done, and much more can be done, with only one circumstance. If regional political elites understand that that it is dangerous, that alarmism in foreign policy is dangerous, that wars cost too much to them. Without this fair, without this understanding, nothing can be done. That's all.
Thank you.